Sam, I've got to say, you really don't act old enough to have a kid go into college next year.
Oh man, I really thought you were going to say I didn't look old enough. But yeah, tell that to the dozens of college brochures that we get in the mail every week. When my wife and I started visiting campuses this year, it hit me so hard how real this is. We are not just saving anymore. We are figuring out how we're going to start paying for school.
It blows my mind. I mean, I was born in 1995 and college still feels recent for me. But nowadays, you're talking about paying for tuition bills that look bigger than most people's mortgage.
Yeah, I know, right? And really, here's the big thing for families right now. People are overpaying for college every day. They take on too much debt. Some even wreck their own retirements to pay for their kids' school. So today we're going to be breaking down the four keys to cutting college costs, so that way you don't fall into that trap. Welcome to Money and Stuff, where we talk about money, we talk about life, and all of the stuff that impacts both. If you are a Gen X or a millennial that's trying to make smarter financial decisions without all of the jargon, then you are in the right place. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share so that way you don't miss future episodes.
So, Sam, I'm seeing a lot of people in the office that they need to expect college to cost.
Yeah, it is shocking, right? So right now, Americans owe $1.75 trillion in student loans, and the average borrower owes almost $30,000. And believe it or not, there are about 3 million people that are over the age of 60 that are still paying on those student loans.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. I know most of my friends who I went to school with are still paying for their loans, and it just feels like this massive weight on your shoulders. Like they can't move forward with buying a house, saving, investing. I mean, I can't imagine having that feeling all the way into my 60s. That goes from feeling like you can't buy a house to feeling like retirement may not be possible.
Yeah, exactly. That's why families just can't stumble into this process. Without a plan, you end up late stage scrambling, making emotional decisions that could cost tens of thousands more than necessary.
Yeah, it's scary how common that is. Let's start by taking people through the four keys to paying for college that we take all of our clients through.
So, key number one is parents really need to be the leaders of this process, right? Kids should be co pilots, but they should not be the ones that are flying the plane.
Yeah. I mean, when I was 17, my college decision making plan was essentially where are my friends going? Is this a school that I've heard about before? Does it have good vibes? The financial efficacy of it was not even remotely in the picture.
I think people really need to ask themselves, like, would you let your 17-year-old negotiate a $200,000 financial decision? Right. But a lot of families don't think that way, and they let their kids chase these colleges with either like, a brand name or prestige or rankings, but they're not really thinking about the money aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the US News rankings list was pretty much all anybody would talk about. It was like the Oscars for college.
What a lot of people don't realize is those rankings really reward popularity, the wealth of the college. It doesn't always give a lot of weight to the outcomes. So parents really need to focus on that cost, the right fit of the school for their kids, and the graduation rate success of that school.
Definitely. So, key number one, parents take the wheel, kids are riding shotgun.
Yeah, man, that's what it needs to be. Um, lucky enough for me, having been in this industry long enough and seeing enough people go through these things, I knew to have these conversations with my son. I mean, he definitely has schools he wants to go to, right? But we've really had to have the conversations of what it is he's actually trying to achieve, what schools would be right for that, what the different cost of these schools are, and what that means. Um, Being upfront with him like that really helps him understand either the burden that he could be putting on himself later or the burden that we would be taking on for him.
Yeah. And I think that's why key number two is so important. Parents really need to know that the tuition price that you're seeing on that list is not the final price of what it's going to cost.
Yeah, college is actually a buyer's market right now.
I know that actually shocked me. So, I mean, it makes sense. I saw, a statistic that basically said that in 15 years, there's going to be 650,000 less 18-year-olds than there are today. So about 15% less. And that's on top of the fact that there's already over 2.5 million fewer students than there were at the start of the last decade. But way I remember it, schools acted as though you were just the luckiest boy in the world just to be able to apply.
Really, only the most elite schools can act that way. For the rest of the schools, they are fighting for those students. Right now, 61% of public school students and 89% of private school students don't pay that sticker price, right? The average tuition discounts at private schools are over 60%.
So basically, tuition price is kind of like the sticker price on a car. Nobody really paying that number.
I think it comes down to whether or not you don't have to pay that sticker price, right? There's families that don't realize that they actually have leverage. They see themselves as beggars, hoping that their kids can go to school there, when really they are buyers. I have a buddy that I play golf with that had to send twins to school. Can you imagine sending two kids at the same time in the same year? Like, nuts, right? So he was really, really aware of the leverage he had. And he actually negotiated with these schools. So for one of his kids, right, she had a specific school she wanted to go to for a specific program that they had. But she was also accepted into these other schools. And these other schools offered her more tuition assistance and scholarships. And so after he got the award letter from the school she actually wanted to go to, he started negotiating with them and letting them know that other schools were giving her more and that she would really love to attend that school, but these other schools were making it much more attractive. And they did come back with more award money, and she ended up being able to go to the school that she wanted to for a much, much lower price.
Have to keep that in mind, that you can play them against each other and end up potentially getting a lower tuition. That's a heck of a story to have.
Yeah, people are surprised that they have that negotiating power. I mean, even I was surprised by it.
Well, let's move to key number 3, the pegs.
Yeah, so you need to gather the pegs, and that stands for the price, your expected family contribution, the graduation rate of the school, and what starting salaries are for kids coming out of those schools.
Yeah, so let's talk about these pegs, because I know when I was choosing a school, I basically thought, well, a degree's a degree, but clearly there's more to it than that.
Yeah. So price, right? I mean, you can go online and there are these net price calculators, right? So don't assume that that sticker price we're talking about is real. Go look at these net price calculators to find out what you might actually be paying. And then for the expected family contribution, you're going to need to file the FAFSA early. So that way, you know what you can expect or what schools expect you to pay. And then the graduation rate, right? As far as a 4-year degree goes, you want to see, does this school actually have kids graduating in 4 years? Or do a lot of kids take 6 years? I mean, if your kid is going to school for 6 years instead of 4 years, that's 2 more years of cost. And then the last thing to think about is the starting salary, right? Compare what the graduates earn to what the degree costs at the different schools.
So this is like running the numbers before buying an investment property, right? I mean, you wouldn't just buy because the kitchen looks nice.
Yeah, but parents usually pick colleges based on feel, not facts. Knowing these 4 things really puts the financials front and center.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think it goes back to when we talk about the driver's seat, being in the driver's seat as the parent, right? It goes beyond just what is the cost going to be, looking at that sticker price, right? What is the tuition going to look like? And, we work to guide clients through those other things that you may not think about being as relevant, but can play a big role in helping you find a school that fits and helping separate the emotion from the reality of it, right? Looking at things like, what is the graduation rate? Looking at the percentage of students who receive financial aid. looking at the salaries out of school. That's a big one that I think a lot of people don't realize is going to an Ivy League versus going to, a public school in your state. You might assume that that Ivy League is going to have a significantly higher salary, but if you look, 5 years out with a degree from the same degree from each of those schools, you really don't see much difference in that salary. So you really want to make sure that you're looking at all of these factors and leading that when your kid is starting to look at schools. So let's get into number 4. You need to understand financial aid.
Yeah, there's really 4 buckets when it comes to helping you pay for school or things that offset school cost. So there are grants, there are scholarships, there's loans, and then there are tax credits as well.
Yeah, and I was very fortunate to have gotten a fencing scholarship when I went to school, but I had a lot of friends who basically went after small, $500 to $1,000 scholarships, in chunks. I mean, it kind of feels like bringing a squirt gun to a house fire compared to that daunting tuition bill, but every dollar counts. And I knew more than one person who they got enough of those small scholarships that it ate up a fair chunk of what that cost would have ended up being.
Yeah, you really need to go after every dollar that you can. And some people might actually qualify for federal Pell Grants, but those max out about $6,900. And different states vary, but the biggest source of aid tends to come from the schools themselves. And private colleges, especially, they use merit scholarships to attract really strong students.
Yeah. So if you're aiming at the wrong schools, you're basically chasing the wrong discounts and even not really even getting a guarantee that there will be a discount.
Right. See, those elite schools that everybody wants to go to, they give the best need-based aid, but they don't really do a lot of merit scholarships because they're already getting the top applicants. But other schools, they may give much bigger merit packages to try to attract those applicants. So parents need to know their lane before they apply.
Yeah. And then you have loans. And I mean, I think it's definitely important that parents talk with their kids about what those student payments are going to look like after they get out of school. Like really lay out for them what to expect. I mean, I know when we've shown clients what that looks like, it really hits home, in terms of the burden that their kids are taking on as they're trying to start their life on their own out of school. And as far as tax credits go, that's really when it could make sense to work with a tax professional. So you can just be sure that you're taking advantage of as much tax saving that you're eligible for as possible.
Yeah. In terms of the reality of school by cost, I mean, we've had several instances where we've really had to help parents narrow down the school based on what the result was going to be afterwards. I mean, I can think of one instance in particular where there was this one dream school that our client's kid wanted to go to, and they got accepted. And this is a school that is very, very difficult to get accepted to. But they got into a second school that's also very difficult to get into, but doesn't quite have the same brand recognition as the other school did. Well, the brand recognized school was giving no scholarship, and the other school was giving a full scholarship. And the kid really wanted to go to the brand name school. So we laid it out and we showed them this is what the student loan would be. And when they get out of school, this is what the payment on that loan would be. So you could pay for it, but it means this much would be coming out of your retirement savings. And this is what it would mean to your retirement, either working longer or having less to spend. And if you put that burden on your child, when they graduate school, here's the monthly payment they're going to have, right? As opposed to the other school that fully paid for it, was a top-notch school. And guess what? The salaries were almost the exact same coming out of that school. So was it a tough decision? I mean, yeah, it's a little bit heartbreaking not to go to the school you've always been dreaming about. But when you looked at the numbers, their life was still going to be fantastic when they got out of school, except now they weren't going to have the burden of those student loans, and the parents weren't going to have to sacrifice their own retirement.
Yeah, that's very true. So to recap, the 4 keys. Number 1, parents lead the process. Number 2, remember it's a buyer's market. Number 3, use pegs to compare your schools. And number 4, just understand financial aid.
Yeah, that's it. Do those 4 things. It'll help you avoid overpaying. It'll protect your own retirement while being able to send your kid to school.
And you're living this right now with your son heading off next year.
Yeah, it is real in my house right now, right? And my son's dream school is twice as much as what we were prepared to pay. So we are having tough conversations about whether or not he's going to be able to attend that school, right? But it really set the reality because that school will give scholarships based on certain merit. And so it really let him know what he had to do in this last year of school to earn that scholarship. And it is a little bit different. You know, my son is going to school for music. And so while he's really good, he's got to be one of the best to earn a scholarship to this school. And so it really let him know that it was not good enough to be, better than people around him. He really had to figure out what he needed to do to get as good as possible before he has to start auditioning. And so I think the big takeaway is that he understood this is what it's going to take to have what I really want. And I think as parents, we need to have those open discussions with our kids.
So for any parents listening that are going to be dealing with this at some point, step 1 is what?
I'd say number 1 is do the FAFSA and get your expected family contribution. Know if there's going to be any aid at all. And if you've been doing a fantastic job saving, that number may be that you're going to have to pay for the whole thing. But this number drives everything else. So your starting place is knowing if there's any possibility for aid.
All right. We solved the problem. We just gave our listeners a playbook to make sure that you're not paying off loans when your kid is getting into their 40s.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And hopefully you or your kids don't end up as one of those people who's still paying off your loans in their 60s.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, thanks for listening to the Money and Stuff podcast. If you guys found this helpful, hit like, hit subscribe, share it with a friend. It really helps us out. We've got many more conversations coming your way.